I'm so excited to chat with my good friend Eliza Orleans, career public defender. And we want to take your questions in a minute on everything from what's happening with civil rights, the lack of due process, disappearing immigrants, disappearing citizens, and trying to arrest them, and kind of what we should be doing. But Eliza, please just introduce yourself, make sure everybody knows who you are and how to follow you.
I know. I'm so thrilled when you texted me to ask to do this. I was like, absolutely, let's do
100%.
it. So I am a career public defender for 15 years in Manhattan. The content I make is primarily around kind of explaining the legal system to people or doing breakdowns of understanding your rights when it comes to interactions with the police. Don't ever talk to the cops. If you're paying
Never.
attention, if you take one thing away, don't ever speak to the police. They're not your friends. They can legally lie to you. The Supreme Court has said so. But I really think I love the democratization of information. I love social media because it allows me to get this message out there to people so they understand either complex legal issues or understanding their rights. And so, I'm thrilled that we're going to take some time to talk about, oh, the craziness that's happening right now. I think from doing a live previously, this is only my second live ever, that on the top right corner, folks should be able to follow both of us, like hit
Yeah.
subscribe. And so if my followers are here and you're not already following Qasim or subscribed, like you absolutely should be. He's extraordinary. And for everyone here, yeah, follow me too.
Yeah, the feeling is mutual, Eliza. Follow Eliza and don't just follow her, subscribe. And if it's in your capacity to become a paid subscriber, you should. This is where I forget who said it, but it was a female thought leader. And she said something to the effect of every dollar we spend is a reflection of the world we want to create. And so you want a world where Eliza has a platform, especially with what's happening right now. So do subscribe to her. I'm going to do that right after this Substack Live, but I wanted to say it publicly because I'm asking you guys to do what I'm doing. And I'm not going to ask you guys to do anything I'm not doing either.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Eliza, let's talk about this line that you say. It's not a line, but this wisdom you share often, that never talk to police. And I've heard people say, well, surely there are some instances where it's okay to do so. And I've heard you respond like, no, there's actually not, unless you have a lawyer present. That's the only time. And then your lawyer should be doing the talking. Why are you so adamant on this? Why is this such a big, line in the sand for you, for citizens, for immigrants, for people regardless of status, to not talk to law enforcement?
Well, it's so interesting because I think that there's so many ways in which our constitutional amendments, the Bill of Rights, are lacking, but, they're not supposed to say everything. But one of the things that is laid out right there in the Fifth Amendment is your right to remain silent.
Yeah.
And that it is something that has then been enumerated by court cases. Obviously we call them Miranda warnings. You have the right to remain silent. What you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. And you have the right to an attorney, especially, post Gideon, you have the right to a public defender, even if you cannot afford one. So you have to use that right, and you have to actively know that that is your right, because if you don't say it outright, you might, in fact, not be invoking your right to remain silent. One of the cases that I've previously talked about on my channels is one where someone said, "Yo, let me get a lawyer dog." And a lawyer dog, comma, there was no comma, this was spoken word. They determined that he was maybe just looking for a lawyer dog and not an actual attorney, and they did not consider that an invocation of his right to remain silent. So it's so important that people understand not just that they need to remain silent, but also how they should do it, and how effective it has to be, like how clearly it has to be said in order to be effective. But this is because the police will use your words against you. And in fact, as I always say, they're legally allowed to lie to you. They can say virtually anything they want to twist and manipulate what you say. Any admission of any kind will only serve to hurt you. So if the police are there to interrogate you in any way, even if it's just like, do you know how fast you were going? You should not answer a single question the police ask you.
Yeah, and by the way, on that example of how fast you were going, there's a great company I work with. I've worked with in the past, and I don't work with them anymore, but I still fully support them. Called Turn Signal, where for a subscription every month of like $8-10, it's something nominal. You can have access to counsel immediately when pulled over, and the counsel can help manage the conversation. So you have those resources available. And I want to double down on this point Eliza, you made about law enforcement being able to lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
This was something that came to my attention some years ago when it was pretty clear that the NYPD was illegally spying on American Muslim communities, all without a warrant. They'll hire these informants and they'll cut them deals and just all sorts of grotesque things. And obviously, the logical reaction is, well, if police can lie to me and it's legal, then I can lie to them as well, right? And it's like, well, no, not at all, not in the least bit. If they lie to you, it's somehow patriotism. If you lie to them, it's a criminal act for which you can go to prison, even if you hadn't done anything else wrong as well. So never lie to police,
Correct.
ever. But that also goes back to this philosophy. So, what is their argument on why police can lie to you? What? Because I want people to understand that they're not just saying that because they feel like it. They have a very specific strategy behind that. What is their strategy in arguing that police should be able to lie to someone, even if they haven't been accused or committed any crime whatsoever?
Well, I mean, the justification for so many of these things that we see, whether it's FISA warrants or police lying to you, is always in the name of public safety. The digital surveillance, everything we see is always really done in the name of keeping the public safe, keeping criminals off the streets. And so their kind of justification for this is, well, if all it took was the police to say, somebody else already came to us and implicated you, and that convinced you to confess to a crime, well, then you were going to confess to that crime anyhow, or you committed that crime anyhow. So of course they should be able to lie to you. That's the justification. Obviously, I disagree
Yep,
with it, but they
of
can
course.
lie to you about virtually anything. They can tell you, oh, we'll let you go in 5 minutes as long as you just say XYZ. They can say, your co-conspirator has already implicated you. They can say, we found your fingerprints at the scene. We found your DNA on the murder weapon. They can say, your mother is dying and she says you should say this, and we will let you go see your dying mother on her deathbed if you just say this, and that can still all be lies.
Yeah, and I think that's where I want folks to kind of understand that when we talk about public safety and law enforcement, they're two very different things. And this is a conversation I have with my conservative friends all the time, that we have to separate this narrative. This is a propaganda narrative to claim that law enforcement equals more public safety. In fact, all the studies on this have no correlation. There's no causation that more money for law enforcement means more public safety. But what we do know creates more public safety is better mental health funding, better funding for suicide prevention, better funding for addiction treatment, better funding to combat homelessness, better funding for schools in general,
Mhm.
raised living wages. I mean, the list goes on and on of all things that we can do that don't require sending armed tanks to local police departments that will actually result in public safety. And this is more of a rant, less of a question, but I want to hear your thoughts. Why are Democrats so bad at that messaging? Like, it's so easy to me to say, hey, if you want public safety, let's invest in public safety health professionals as opposed to an armed agent of the state with a gun with the lethal authority to kill you.
It is so frustrating for me, and to see the Democrats go backwards, like for example
Yeah,
taking the death penalty, like full on opposition to the death penalty, which is something, I've been fervently against for my
100%.
entire life, since I understood that the state
Yep,
murdered people. um that was taken off the Democrats' platform this most recent election
ridiculous.
cycle. Like the idea
Ridiculous.
that public safety is anything other than investing in housing, in education, in healthcare, in mental health care, in all sorts of things. I mean, it is just so beyond me that is not so obvious, because now actually we have data that backs that up. Like
Yes.
there are now longitudinal studies that show that places where these low level offenses are not prosecuted, where people are not locked up and jailed and really and prosecuted for these offenses, that in fact the recidivism rates are lower, that people get to
Yeah.
remain in their homes, remain in their communities, remain at their jobs, and really be contributing members of society, rather than the like devolution into more crime and disorder from locking people up and taking them outside of their community for even a short period of time.
And the math on it is so solid, Eliza. I mean, the average cost. I mean, it depends on locality, but you're spending $300 a night of taxpayer money
Oh
to
my
lock
God,
someone
Rikers
up.
Island is $1,500 a night. You could
Fifteen
put
hundred
someone up
dollars.
in the freaking Plaza Hotel.
It's like mine. And so when people say like, "Well, I don't want my tax dollars,"
I know.
putting up somebody for free. Well, they're already doing that, and it's this privatized prison industry is modern day slavery. It's not
Absolutely.
like modern day slavery. It is modern day slavery
Absolutely.
according to the 13th Amendment. And this is not like a debate about this. It actually is modern day slavery because that's what the 13th Amendment loophole calls it.
Yep.
Slavery. It's not my words, it's not Eliza's words, it's actual slavery. So the question is, would you rather your tax dollars go, $1,500 a month to put somebody up in a studio apartment and get them the treatment they need, or $1,500 a night to put them up in a prison or a private prison and make billionaires even richer? Like, why are we even having this debate? It's such a common sense solution. And then, by the way, you have lower crime rates, you have lower recidivism, and these are folks who can now actually get gainful employment and be able to work and be able to become self-sustaining. Every study done on this shows that within a year, more than 90% of people are able to work and live independently. Why can't that be the messaging?
Well,
And I
I
know
think
it's
I think we both know, and it's I saw you post it recently, and it's something I say all the time because people will say to me, "Oh, Eliza, isn't the criminal justice system, which you will never hear me call it, it is the criminal legal system or the criminal punishment bureaucracy because it is
yes,
certainly not justice.
sure,
Isn't it broken?" And I always say, "It's not broken. It's not. It's operating exactly as
exactly right,
designed." It's
exactly right.
somebody just said in the comments, the cruelty is the point. The deliberate oppression of certain people is why the system was created to act in the way that it does. And so it's not a mistake. It's deliberate.
And this is why we need a real opposition party. And like I say this as somebody who's run for Congress as a Democrat, who's been the Democratic nominee for Congress. And I was fighting within my own party internally that why are we so hell bent on trying to recruit conservatives to flip their vote when we know our ideas are extremely popular? Universal health care has a 70-75% popularity. Abortion access has like an 80-85% popularity. Getting corporate money out of politics has a 90-95% popularity. Why the hell do we keep trying to become more and more right wing? I saw a tweet that it's like every now and then I see a tweet that I'm like, damn, I wish I had thought of that because that's so good. And the tweet said that we seem to forget that between the administration that was caging children and the administration that's deporting immigrants to a death camp, there was a Democratic administration that decided, let's give ICE even more money. And it's just so absurd to me that one, the Biden administration did that, and two, that when you call that out, people on the left get upset. Well, why are you attacking our own? It's like, well, help me understand what I'm supposed to do. We see fascism, and then the people that we elect to respond to that fascism are somehow enabling that even more. Like, what do you want us to do at this point? To shut up and sit down? Because that's not an option. That's not the way I function. And I feel like until and unless we have an honest conversation that we don't just need a resistance party, we need an opposition party, it's only going to get worse for all of us.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. As someone who also ran for office as a Democrat, and was told even by like the liberal media,
Yeah,
like the New York Times and the liberal media called me a radical,
yeah,
a radical, and I was like, but I'm sorry, like I feel like I'm taking crazy pills here. Like I'm the person who's saying that we should provide people who need treatment for substance use disorder the treatment that they need, which would be cheaper for taxpayers as well. And you're the ones saying that those people should be locked up in a
yeah,
place where they are at risk of dying, where no one has ever been cured of their addiction. And you're calling me the radical? You
yeah,
are the freaking radicals here.
yeah.
I'm not a radical. It's like it's unbelievable that the things that I was saying, we need to shift the Overton window so far for someone like me to like get elected, for someone like you to get elected, like that it's so frustrating when we're called radical, when like the things that we're saying should be, these are the common sense things.
This is basic human dignity. I remember reading in law school Dr. Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, and she brings out a point in there about how Bill Clinton, the first black president, if you're listening to this, I did air quotes, um, suspended his campaign or paused his campaign to go back to Arkansas to oversee the execution of a man who
I
was
know
so
very well.
mentally incompetent and deficient that when he was asked about what dessert does he want for his final meal, he said, "Let's save it for tomorrow morning so I can have it tomorrow." Like he didn't understand and comprehend. And Bill Clinton goes and after the execution, he says, "Don't let anyone ever say that Democrats aren't tough on crime." Like that's not tough on crime. That's a war crime. to execute somebody who is so unaware of his own surroundings is just mind blowing to me. And you mentioned that once you realize how just kind of unjust our criminal legal system is, you started to oppose the death penalty. I went into law school thinking, well, yeah, I can see why the death penalty makes sense. Some people have committed horrible crimes and they should be put to death. It was
Mhm.
in law school where I was like, holy crap, this is one of the most grotesque practices that we have in this country. Not only are about 11, 12% of the people we execute completely innocent, but just the arbitrariness of who gets executed and who doesn't is beyond unjust. And I just wish the Democratic Party would recognize that these values that we're talking about of ending, mass incarceration, ending the death penalty, protecting universal health care as a human right, stop funding foreign regimes that are committing war crimes in Palestine. These are extraordinarily popular ideas, and we would win every election by a landslide if you just had the family jewels to step up and say, we're not going to tolerate a slip and slide into fascism. We're actually going to be an opposition party for once.
I know. And like it's so crazy because even in a here I am, in a blue city, in a blue state, and even in New York, like, we're in the situation that we're in because we elected a corrupt cop
Yes.
to be our mayor of New York City.
Yeah.
It's like, who wants to bring back stop and frisk, who's allowing ICE into Rikers.
Yep.
It's just unbelievable. It's like fascism is just like takes hold no matter what party you are part of. And it's like it comes in so many forms. I mean, we see it in the criminal legal system all the time. Like, it comes in the form of court fees and ankle monitors and ice raids and all sorts of things. I mean, it just all compounds, and it really is so devastating to be one of the people who wants to fight back against this and feeling so powerless. But someone just said in the comments, it's easy to feel helpless or hopeless. But Mariama Kaba writes, hope is a discipline. And I
Mm.
think that we both live that maxim every day, because
Yeah.
you wake up every day and you're like, I'm going to make the decision to continue to fight because I'm not willing to give up. And
That's
every
right.
day I recognize that I can make a little bit of a difference here, a little bit of a difference there, and tell people to try to make small differences in their communities. And hopefully we see change in our lifetime.
If you guys have questions, throw them in the comments. Eliza and I will do our best to answer them. And to build on that point about hope, one of my favorite quotes of the late, great James Baldwin is he was asked, how does he fight the hopelessness? And he says, I've never been hopeless. I've been angry at the world, but I've never despaired because I can't look at my children and say there's no hope. It's like you can't tell the children there's no hope. You have to keep fighting. You have to keep going. So let's talk about that. And as people are sharing their questions, what gives you hope? What gets you fired up? Because we all have, our emotional batteries that go up and go down and whatnot. I'm still struggling through. Just to say it very openly, my father just passed 3 weeks ago, and I'm struggling through that. I know I'm going to struggle through that for a while, but I know it still gives me hope. I'd love to hear from you, Eliza. What gives you hope? What keeps you fired up?
Well, I mean, I always say that I'm like fueled by rage at injustice. And so I think that, if you can, I also, like, I agree with, with James Baldwin. I'm very angry. I'm
Yeah.
angry all the time. Um, it's like why I titled my Substack Objection Everything. Like, my
Yes.
subtitle is always at a 10, because I had a judge say to me, Miss Orleans, must you always be at a 10? And I was like, actually, Judge, yes. Like, I do feel that the circumstances require it. Like, while this crisis exists, while mass incarceration exists and the unfair treatment of my clients exists, like, yeah, I'm always going to be at a 10. And so I think that the thing that gives me hope is seeing other people who are fighting, building coalitions and joining together with like-minded folks and feeling like, okay, look at us. Like, we're not in silos. We are organizing. We are bringing people together. We are getting out in the streets. We're getting out on the internet, and we are all talking about like how we can make the world a better place. And so that definitely gives me hope.
I love
How
it.
about you?
Somebody asked about for you to share your thoughts on the defunding of Head Start. What's the impact of that going to be?
I mean, it's so devastating. My sister is an educator. One of my dear friends is an educator, and like Head Start provides like such opportunities for so many students. And so the idea that they're just going in there and like just dismantling our education systems is absolutely devastating.
And the impact is going to have an even bigger consequence in low-income communities,
Yeah.
especially rural communities as well. And I was talking to a state legislator here today in Illinois at the protest I was at, and we were pointing out how all this like defunding of these social welfare programs are going to hurt rural white communities probably the most, because as we know, white communities are the largest demographic on public welfare, even though they've been convinced otherwise. And then they're going to blame Democrats for that, and you know, this fascist, the White House is going to use that to consolidate even more power. But on the question of what gives me hope, somebody mentioned young people give me hope. Absolutely, and that's not just like a key phrase. If you look at history, you look at Robert Smalls at 22 years old, stole a Confederate vessel and helped the Union win the Civil War. You look at, you know, everyone talks about, as they should, Rosa Parks, but to forget Claudette Colvin, who was 15 years old, a decade before Rosa Parks, refused to get up on a bus and helped set the precedent for Rosa Parks. You look at, you know, Malcolm X, everything he accomplished in life, he was only 39. And as somebody in their 40s, I'm like, God, I got to catch up. I'm like way behind, right? Dr. King was 26 when he led the Montgomery bus boycott. So for the young people who are protesting peacefully on campuses and getting into good trouble, as John Lewis talked about, they give me hope. But also, I feel like we have the benefit of the giants who came before us, and we have
Mm.
the benefit of what they've accomplished. And I actually get annoyed when people say, "Well, we're turning into 1930s Germany," because to me, like, okay, fine, but remember, 1930s Germany existed because Hitler sent his lawyers to the United States to study American Jim Crow laws. And Professor Whitman, in his book Hitler's American Model, talks about this, and he goes, like, here's the crazy part: these lawyers, these Nazi lawyers, go back to Hitler and they say, hey, we may be Nazis, but we are not Americans. Those guys go way too far. They thought the Jim Crow laws were too extreme for the Nazis. And so it's not that we're turning into 1930s Germany, is we're turning into 1920s America. And we need to
Oh,
recognize that. And as devastating that as that is, let's also recognize that it was that sparked much of the civil rights movement that we saw ultimately, you know, culminate in the civil rights laws and the fall of Jim Crow. And sure, we still have struggles with mass incarceration, which are horrific and horrifying. But I say this to say we have a roadmap of how to get out. And I think what gives me hope is we have the ability to apply that roadmap, but we need to organize effectively in this space.
yeah.
I'm looking at some of the questions on here. Somebody to do a lot of yeah, white nationalists are an issue, absolutely. Um, I have the most respect for Palestinians and how they never give up. We can learn a lot from them. Absolutely right. Um, One question I have for you, as I'm going through this, is I know you ran for office before. I think that's how I got introduced to you. When you ran for office, you ran a brilliant, stellar campaign,
Thanks.
and no, I loved it. It was amazing. And I think one question I have is, would you ever consider running for office in the future?
Listen, never say never. I mean, I even if I ran a decade from now, I would still be young for public office,
Yes.
especially compared to the current electeds that we have. But like I said, it's my ideas were not just mildly unpopular, and I think in 2020, 2021, they were more popular than they are now. It feels as though we've gone kind of taken it back, like we've
Yeah.
taken, the pendulum swings and we've swung back from where we were. I'd been out in the streets with Black Lives Matter protests, I Can't Breathe, Eric Garner stuff. This was, that was like it's 7 years before I ran for office. And all of a sudden in 2020, friends who had never marched in the street, I mean, not my public defender friends, but like my normie friends were
Right.
in the streets, Black Lives Matter protests, like holding up signs, really engaged. And I thought, okay, like we're having real conversations about police brutality, about mass incarceration, about the unjust way in which people of color are treated in this country. Like, is this going to be a turning point moment? And unfortunately, it wasn't.
Yeah. And
We've taken a real backswing since then. And I think now all of a sudden people are, oh, crime is up, crime is rising, oh, lock more people, oh, we went too far with DEI and woke this and woke that. And like it's actually, really gotten worse. And
yeah.
so while I say never, we also would have to shift the Overton window pretty dramatically for someone like me who's been very public about my views on all of these things to ever, I mean, not that I would ever change them to run for office anyhow, because that's not who I am as a
Sure.
person, but in order for someone like me to get elected, the the tenor of our electorate, even in a very like blue city like New York, would have to, change pretty dramatically. I didn't
Yeah,
lose by a little.
I think you're right. No, I think you're right. And I mean, I I almost wonder if it's as much that the tenor needs to change, or how do we wake people up? I mean, I think it's a combination of the two, because every election, the single largest demographic of registered voters are people who stay home. And I chuckled earlier when you said that, my normie friends, right? Like, we're not normal. This is not normal to be outraged all the time, but it needs to be, right? We need to normalize that, because it's, again, a James Baldwin quote, to be, well, he said to be black and to be consciously aware is to be in a state of outrage at all times. And I think, just to expand upon that, to be somebody who cares about human beings in general is to be outraged all the time because of just the injustices that we're seeing. But that's really it. I mean, to me, it's how do we activate that base who's really feeling completely ignored or feeling like my vote doesn't even matter? Because when you see these megalomaniac billionaires drop 100 million into a Wisconsin Supreme Court election and lose and realize that's the equivalent of someone like you or me dropping $5 into an election, it doesn't matter to them, right? That like that's
Right.
not it's not even like weekend money, weekend trip money. It's like bad coffee money for them. And so I get that that feels hopeless, but for me, that really kind of is the golden ticket. If we can just activate, and just activate as if it's a small thing, but activating those folks is really, to me, the golden ticket. I haven't figured that part of it out. I don't know how we wake people up prior to it affecting them personally, but I feel like, what else do people need to see at this point?
But I do think that more and more people are going to be affected personally. They are
Agreed.
going,
Yeah,
this
I
is
agree.
something that, with this trade war that Trump has started with China, the billionaires aren't going to feel the effect of the increasing costs of every single thing that we need to buy on a daily basis, but the average working American will.
Yeah,
You walk into a place and you have to decide between getting food for your kids or getting new clothes or a toy. Like, things are going to be exponentially more expensive, and your kids are going to have to wear shoes that they're grown out of. It's like people are
yeah,
really going to feel the effect of these tariffs in a
yeah.
major, major, major way, and hopefully blame the right people, which is
Some
the current administration.
I agree, but we gotta win the messaging battle. Somebody asked that question, and that's why I want to segue to that based on what you just said, Eliza. Somebody said, "Well, obviously it's gaslighting. The crime is up, but how do we win that battle?" And guys, the honest answer is invest in people like Eliza. She is a national expert in the space, has decades of experience in the space, and I'll say this because I know she's too modest to. She could go to big law and make insane amounts of money because she has all the experience in the world. She's where she is making a public defender salary because she deeply and truly cares about this. It's up to the rest of us to say, hey, I'm going to invest in you. And if it's $8 a month, $300 a year, $50 a year, whatever it is, it goes a long way. If you get 5,000 people investing in someone like Eliza for $8 a month, guess what? That frees her to be so much more effective in what she's doing. And I'm saying this because, again, I know she's too modest to say it, but it's the reality. If you want to talk about how we win the messaging battle, it's not going to happen by holding hands and singing kumbaya. It's going to happen by investing money and resources in the people doing the work. The right is spending hundreds, if not billions of dollars in their propaganda campaigns, partnering with Facebook, literally buying out companies like Twitter to turn them into right wing echo chambers and that are extremely effective. You think TikTok is going to be neutral? Of course not. They're getting 60 million views of Charlie Kirk. We need to invest in our leaders in the space. Eliza is one of those people. That's why I wanted to have this conversation with her publicly to share her to my platform of viewers and subscribers, that this is somebody that you want to invest in as well, because she's doing the hard work. And it's hard to do it day in and day out, knowing full well, hey, I could quit this job, get a job in big law and make 7 figures. I'd sell my soul out, but at least I'd be financially comfortable. And I admire you immensely, Eliza, because you're not taking that ticket. You're focusing on what matters, and you're appealing to the better angels of people to say, hey, invest in me, support me. And I'm hopeful that people respond to that.
Me too. And I think that is like, early TikTok days, like when I
Yes.
first started posting this stuff on TikTok and talking about messaging on crime, I think that is one of the critical things that we have to like really control the messaging on, because every single mainstream media source, whether it be, I mean, they do is highlight crime narratives because that sells. It's
Yeah.
like, ooh, someone got pushed into the subway tracks. That's exciting. Like, let's highlight this. And it's like makes it seem as though disorder is so much worse than it is. And that is what fuels mass incarceration,
Yeah.
because the language we use matters so much. And so the more that we can get this message out about just even humanizing people, I think that's like maybe why I've been focused so much on like Kilmar Abrego Garcia's story, because like this is a Maryland father with a 5-year-old autistic son who had a court order that he could stay. This is someone whose story I thought would really, of course, there are so many other people who we could also be talking about, but focusing on this one individual kind of to show just the inhumanity and cruelty of what our government is doing. And I think like kind of the same happens in our local systems. And so like what I always implore people to do, I say like, your local courthouse is open to the public. Like, go and observe arraignments. Like in New York, we have night court 365 days a year. And like I tell people, like, they're standing up every day and saying, on behalf of the people of the state of New York, like the prosecutors are acting in your name with your taxpayer dollars to lock people up in a way that is cruel and unjust and doesn't keep us safe. And it's just like, the way that we talk about these things really matters. And so like I'm always trying to help people kind of find the language, because I think that so much of the dehumanizing language that's used fuels mass incarceration. When people say, "Oh, someone is a criminal or a felon or an illegal," or
Yeah.
any of those terms serve to prop up mass incarceration, because those
Yeah.
dehumanizing terms allow people to like other someone in a way that's like, well, they're talking about criminals, not me, and
Right.
really it just contributes to the perpetuation of this horrible system.
And remember, the Bill of Rights exists to prevent a government from having overreach over any of us. That's the whole point of it. And so when you buy into that language, you're basically breaking down that entire. I mean, I could tell you stories about when I trained law enforcement on this stuff as well, and like educating law enforcement on. Remember, you guys are the bad guys in this scenario, not because you're bad people, but because you are the agents of the state, and you need to understand why this document is sacred. One person asked, one cadet asked, how do we trick people into giving us consent to search them? And I was with a sheriff who is a good friend of mine and shut him down and said, just think about how horrible of a statement that actually is and how that's something you would hear in a fascist dictatorship. You shouldn't hear over here. We have a couple of questions, Eliza, in our last 5 minutes I wanted to go through. Well, one person says, please do not burn out. Hey, when we get support from you folks, that's what helps us not burn out. So thank you for that compassion and
Yes,
support.
thank you, thank you. Appreciate you all. And if you're not subscribed or following both of us, click on the top corner. There are 3 dots, and you can just hit subscribe to both of us right now.
CC asks, we will lose due process for citizens. What is the next right we should be expect to be endangered? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, listen, I think we can't catastrophize, because right now the courts are saying that due process still exists and due process must exist. And so we can't cede due process. We can't CEDE.
Yeah.
We have to say, no, no, due process exists and we demand it.
Yes.
And anytime that it is violated, we call it out and we say, this is unacceptable. This is overreach by the government. We will not let this stand. So we have
Correct.
not lost due process, and I don't intend to let that happen.
Amen to
um,
that, my friend. Amen to that. Yeah, let's not give that one. That's a bit like to me. If we lose due process, our democracy is over. I mean, there's not even a question at that point. So no, we cannot lose this battle at all. Judy asks, how can we stop the right wing media from spewing the lies that cause people to hate each other?
that's hard, because I think, we have shown that they are a machine. The way the right wing operates in media, whether it's Fox News or whether it's some of these people who have massive platforms, um, they are dominating the media infrastructure. But I think, people like Qasim, people like me, people like so many of the folks that we promote on our pages are trying really hard to fight back. And you all, if you're here watching this, if you're watching this after the fact, you all are you're doing so much just by participating in that way with us, by sharing our stuff, by commenting, by liking, by telling your friends, okay, we need to make sure that we are kind of fighting back against this right wing media machine. And we're doing everything we can, because I
Yeah.
don't think we can stop them from doing what they're doing. All we can do is try to counter it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. We're down to the last couple of minutes. Eliza, in addition to folks subscribing to you, and I think you and I have the same mentality that if you can subscribe as a paid subscriber, great. But even as a free subscriber, and sharing the content is extraordinarily valuable and priceless. And so, even if it's not in your budget, don't feel bad about that. But subscribe for free and share that
Yeah,
content because it
absolutely.
goes a long
I
way.
have not yet paywalled a single thing
Me
because
either.
I think it's too important. I
I
don't
agree.
feel right. Like, I'm putting out content that I want people to see. I
Yeah.
want people to understand. I want people to know their rights. And so I don't feel comfortable putting it behind a paywall.
Same.
If I do like a deep legal dive on a certain case and I don't think people need to know it, there's a chance I'm going to paywall something in the future because it's my like intellectual property. I'm going to put in a lot of hours of work
Yeah.
for it. But I'm not paywalling anything right now. And so please, please, please just make sure you're subscribing, because that's what matters.
Very beautifully well said, and I co-sign that 100% of the way. There's something salty in my mind of like, I'm a human rights lawyer. Here's your human rights, and give me $5, and I'll tell you how to protect them. Like that just feels so wrong to
Mm.
me. And I think for those who can become paid subscribers, remember you're not only supporting us, but you're also supporting the access for folks who may not have the financial means you do. It goes a long way. In addition to that, uh, one, where can folks find you outside of Substack? I know you have a pretty prolific Instagram and TikTok. And two, if I just want to get started, I don't know where to get started. Like I've never done this before. I'm realizing, holy crap, the house is on fire. I got to do something. What is that first act that you would encourage folks to do after subscribing to you to like get involved in a sustainable long term way?
Well, first of all, you can find me. I'm on every platform. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on TikTok, Eliza Orleans, Instagram, E Orleans. Trying to post on Substack, just as much as everywhere else. I have a YouTube channel at Eliza.Orleans. Um, but I think that the way to get involved is to start by educating yourself. Like, just look up who your local representatives are. Look up who your member of Congress is, maybe your senators. Look up your local representatives as well, whether it's a city council person, a state assembly member, a state senator, and show up to things that they host and ask tough questions, the things that are bothering you. I would say, like, these are your elected representatives. Like, you have the right to hear from them. And so show up at their offices, call them. If you don't get through, call again. Really just go to their town halls, go to their events that they have, and really make your voice heard. And you will meet other engaged members of your community if you do stuff like that. And so start local, start really hyper local, start organizing in your own communities, and try to get involved.
I love that. That's such great advice. And do like a temp check. Do I know who my city council members are? Do I know who my school board members are who are deciding the curriculum for what my kids are learning? Do I know who my water sanitation person is to make sure my water is clean when I
Yeah.
drink it? These are all the folks who have a
And also your local district attorney, because that person is
yes.
making a lot of decisions as to prosecution, and your tax dollars are going to arresting people, to police overtime, to police abuses. The payouts, those are not coming from cops. Those are, you are paying for that when the police are abusive to someone. So just start now. Don't put too much pressure on yourself, but someone says start now, start anywhere, do something. I love that. Like, I think, like, that's exactly what we're trying to say here. Like, just get acquainted with your local electeds and hold them accountable, and honestly vote them out if you don't like what they're doing.
I love that. And you vote them out by first understanding what your role there is, and understanding how much power you actually have locally, because it's a lot more than people give themselves credit for. Eliza, this was great. Thanks for doing this.
Oh my
Let's
god,
do this
thank
again
you.
soon.
Absolutely, so much fun. And everyone, thank you for joining. It was so much fun having everyone here.
All right, y'all. Keep your heads up. Follow Eliza. Follow me. Reach out to us with questions, and we'll do this again soon, guys. Much love. Peace out.
Bye.